Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back once again to the channel. You know it is. And if you're first time here, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. It would help the channel out and be much appreciated. And today, the reason why we are here is because of the embargo lift on the Intel Battle Mage B580. What we're going to do is, since we didn't get sent one, we're not that lucky just yet because I guess we don't have enough subscribers, so that's the reason why you need to subscribe. So this way we'll be able to get out there and show YouTube and, tell everybody that we are a channel, we are a reviewer, and we do review PC parts. So, let's go ahead and see what I pulled up, because I pulled up some benchmarks. I pulled it up from TechSpot, and I pulled it up from, drumroll please, I pulled it up from TechPowerUp. So, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that and see what we got cooking. So stick around, don't go anywhere, don't touch your dial. And I'll do the best I can with the tools that I have in hand. So let's go ahead and switch to the action screen. And as you can see, we already got TechSpot pulled up just for you. And what we're going to have to do is, I know y'all are going to say, Jay, where is the big cursor? Well, I do this every time and I always forget, so y'all are going to have to put in the comments below, hey Jay, where's the big cursor? So, let's bring it back in. Now, this says Intel Arc B580 review, best value GPU, and they give it a 90% score. So there must be a reason why they didn't give it the extra 10%, but they did give it something. So let's go ahead and scroll down. I'm not going to read you all this right here because it's not going to be worth your time. But looking at the B570 right here, MSRP is at $220. The B580 is at $250. The Intel Arc A580 is at $180, and the A770 is between $330 and $350. So, knowing that the B570, that hasn't been launched yet. Now, remember, it launches January 16th. So, but right now, today is embargo lift day, so we can talk about it. December 12th, right here. And it's launching December the 13th. So, it doesn't look like, it's got 12 gigabytes of VRAM. It's got a 192-bit bus. That's about the same as the RTX 4070. Has this, but the speed, the RTX 4070 is a little bit faster. We'll get into that later, but it says it'll boost up to 2,850 megahertz. That's 2.850 gigahertz. And it's got a memory bus that delivers 456 gigabits per second. That's memory bandwidth. Bus width is 192-bit. We already said that. And it's a PCIe 4.0 X8. Now, before we go on, I want to talk to you all a little bit about something. Okay, so we understand how the PCIe works. Okay, you got it on your motherboard. You got that top slot. That's an X16 slot. X16. Now, it depends on your motherboard, like the B450, excuse me, as an example, and don't forget your drinking snacks, by the way. That's what I needed. B450 will do a PCIe 3.0. The B550 will do a PCIe 4.0. The B650 will do PCIe 4.0 or 5.0. And this is an AMD reference, so you understand that. Now, the B800 series will do PCIe 5.0, 4.0, and so on. Now, keep all that in mind. The reason why I'm saying this and bringing this to your attention is because when you got a graphics card that's 4.0 X8, when you scale it down to a lesser motherboard like the B450, it's going to be at 3.0 X8. What would have been better, I would have thought, that gives the card more, lanes to deal with, gives you better bandwidth and everything else if they would have went to a 4.0 x16. The reason why is that is because if they go to a 4.0 x16 and you go down to a B450 motherboard, it'll go back to a 3.0 x16, which would be equal to basically a PCIe 4.0 x8. Close to it. So, but having it locked in at x8, you lose that advantage of those extra 8 lanes. You lose the advantage. That means it cuts down on the speed. Something I really don't care for is the x8 on the PCIe slot for a graphics card. I'd rather have it x16. That's just my preference. I don't know. It might be different in some people's preference. Or it might be that Asus might do this Intel card with those extra 8 lanes not being used. They might take and do like they did on their, their one card. I think it was a 4060. I can't remember, but I think it is. Y'all can quote me down below if it was the 4060 or not. I think it was. Where they took that extra 8 lanes and they built onto the card an SSD slot to use up the extra 8 lanes. That would have been something that Intel could have done on this card to give it a little bit better advantage, especially with somebody that, if they don't have M.2 SSD built onto their motherboard, this would have gave them a better advantage, and then they would be able to use all x16 lanes. So, I think that's something they might come out in the future. It would be good for this card, giving it that extra little boost with a little bit of extra storage space. And later on down the road, that they might take a card like this, and when Microsoft decides they want to do direct storage, doing a card like this and doing direct storage, having the SSD built onto the graphics card, would give it a better advantage. Especially if the flow over of the amount of VRAM that you're using flows into the SSD card, and or the M.2 SSD, and picks up some space from there, because it's built right onto the graphics card and it's close as you can get it. That would give a better advantage on direct storage. Even though that it cuts down a little bit on the speed, I would rather have more access to more VRAM and substituting it with the amount of speed on an SSD, M.2 SSD. I would rather go that route. But if you use the M.2 SSD on the motherboard to do direct storage, there might be a little bit more of a latency compared to having it built onto the graphics card. So, that's just my opinion. Let's go ahead and go back to the action screen. Okay, let's go ahead and just get to the benchmarks. I'm going to tell you what they used for a test system right here. Let's enlarge this a little bit bigger. Probably because y'all can't see it that well. So, let's go ahead and just make it larger so that way you can see what is cooking. Okay, they're saying on their test bench that they use the CPU right here. They used the 9800X3D. The motherboard they're using, it's right here, Gigabyte X670E Master, and the BIOS is right down here, and they enabled rebar. So the BIOS they used is F33F, and the memory they used is right here, is the G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB DDR5 6000 CL30, and the clocks on that is 30-38-38-96. So, and the graphics cards that they're using in this test right here is they're using all these graphics cards right here. They got the 3060, 3060 Ti, 3070, 4060, the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte, the 4060 Ti 8 gigabyte, 4070, which I have, but they're not using probably the dual 4070 OC version. But They're using RX 6600, 6650 XT, 6700, 7600, 7600 XT, 7700 XT, the A770, and the B580. And they're using a 1200 watt power supply, and they're using the MSI Prospect 700R case. Storage, they're using the Team Group T-Force A440 M.2 PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD 4 terabytes. Not a bad drive. It's got some good speeds on it. We can check later, and we can pull up the chart on the storage if you guys are wondering what the speeds are. Display driver, they're using the GeForce Game Ready 566.36, which I checked on mine because I got the RTX 4070 and it's the same drivers. Those are the updated drivers for that graphics card. And the AMD Radeon Adrenalin 2412.1, which I checked, and I know it's the most up-to-date driver. And they're using the Intel Arc 32.0.101.6319, which I checked into that too. And that's the newest of the new. Okay, Star Wars Jedi Survivor Series. 1080p, epic quality, higher is better. We'll try to fit everything in. Just be patient with me. We might have to go back a little bit. Yeah, it might be there. Now we got everything in there. Okay, looking at the RTX at the top, we're going to go from the top to the bottom. So we're going to take this slow, so this video might be a little longer than usual, so do expect it. GeForce RTX 4070 on top with 116 FPS and with 1% at 94. RX 7700 XT, 111 FPS and 89 FPS on the 1%. The 3070, 98 FPS with 81 FPS on the 1%. The 4060 Ti 8GB, 97 FPS on the top and 1% at 79 FPS. The 4060 Ti 16 gigabytes comes out the same. So, and I want y'all to understand something. The 4060 Ti 8GB and 16GB are basically the same card. One's got more VRAM than the other one. There's only a 1% difference in there. 1%. So all the testing that I looked on between the two, it all come down to, when I put it all together, 1%. So, but looking at the B580, it comes with the top of 79 FPS and 68 on the 1% lows. That's not too bad on the 1% lows. But looking below that, the 3060 Ti is faster than the B580. The 6700 XT is faster than the B580. These two right here are faster than the B580 because you got the 3060 Ti at 85 FPS on top and 68 FPS on the 1% lows, which the 1% lows are about the same as the B580, but you're still looking at a 6 FPS difference, being the 3060 Ti is faster by 6 FPS. I'm not going to say percentage, I'm just going to say FPS. 6700 XT, now there's like a 3 FPS short of the B580 on the 1% lows, but on the highs, you got the 6700 XT at 83 FPS compared to the B580 at 79 FPS, which there's a 4 FPS difference. So, now if you're wondering if you got the RX 6800 and compared to the B580, don't compare the two. Because you can see right here on this test result that the 6700 XT, which is lower than the RX 6800, and still comes up 4 FPS ahead, but I can tell you the 6800 is going to come up way ahead. I think it's going to come up ahead by the 8%, and on the 1% lows about maybe 4%. So, to y'all thinking that it's not a lot, in a sense, it is. So, moving on, let's see, the 6600, I would say the 6650 XT. And looking at that, if I go to Amazon, I'm gonna take y'all on a little ride. Amazon, and we're gonna look up the 6650 XT. 6650 XT. Now, this is the 6650 XT, 8 gigabytes DDR6. It's $237 compared to $250. Is it going to be worth it? But we'll look at the calculator, and we'll say $250 for the Intel, and we'll minus that from the $237. So $13 difference between the two. $13 difference. Keep that in mind right there. So going back to the chart, going from 55 to 79 for a $13 difference. So we go 55 and we minus that from the 79. 24 FPS difference. 24 FPS difference. So, for that extra $13 and getting 24 more FPS than the 6600 being around this almost the same mark, I'm going to tell you the B580 is definitely worth the price it's at. Definitely worth the price it's at. Definitely. Okay, moving on to 1440p epic quality Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Let's see what it does at 1440p. Since we got the numbers in our head, and this is at 1440p, now the 6600 is getting closer to the B580. So now we got to think about it. So going from down to 33 FPS, and you minusing it from the 51, now it's down to 18 FPS. So now it's dropped 7 FPS, going to 1440p. We'll keep that up there for a little bit. And it still looks like the 6700 XT is breaking even. Can you figure it out? Right here, the 6700 XT and the B580 are breaking even. And you got the A770 down here that's far away from it. So I can tell you the Alchemist series compared to the Battle Mage, so far, Battle Mage has turned out to be better, between 10 to 16% uplift, I think. So if you're wondering, should you go with the A770 or the B580, B580 seems to be right up on top. So it looks like the Alchemist series doesn't look like it's going to be panning out. Not unless they do some driver updates, so that way it picks it up. They could surpass the B580 by updating the drivers and all the software. You never know. That's something we'll see in the future. But as far as with NVIDIA and the RTX 4060, for rasterization, it is kicking the pants off of the RTX 4060. But you can see on top that the 4060 Ti is taking the lead, 8 or 16 gigabytes. So, but this is $250. Those are between $400 and $500. So that makes a big difference. And your 3070 could be, if you get it on a used bit, could be around $200 to $250. 7700 XT is between the $350 and the $400 mark, and the 4070 is around the $529 mark. So, in comparison, I would say that the 7600, The 6650 are more in comparison to the price of the B580, and the A750 would be in comparison too, but doesn't look like that. We got the A750 on this chart. We got the A770. Moving on to the next little bit. This is Plague-Tale Rec Room at 1080p quality, ultra quality. Oh, you gotta love this mouse. 1080p, ultra quality. Let's see. B580, 77 on the FPS on top, and 61 FPS on the 1% lows. Now looking down the scale, let's see the 6650 XT, which I think is more of a price comparison, is at 61 FPS on the top and 48 FPS on the low. 4060 is at 64 FPS on the top and 50 on the low. Something don't seem right to me at 1080p. The 6650 XT is closer to the 4060. That don't seem right to me. I could be wrong about it, but it could be right too. You know, I don't think it's an outlier, so it could be the way that they tested it, you know, but from what I'm seeing, they tested it with the 9800X 3D. So you're telling me that the 6650 XT has a little bit more left in it to make it an entry-level gaming card. Now, there's no sense of me putting the 4070 in there because that's a mid-range gaming card to mid-range to high-end, because the 4070 has the GDDR6X. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if this one here is the GDDR6X or the GDDR6. NVIDIA made two 4070s. One that's the X series and one that's not. So I can tell you, with the X series and the OCX series is a little bit faster than this. But looking at the 3070 being around the same price, looks like the 3070 is taking the tops on it, and the 4060 Ti, 8 and 16 gigabytes seems to be running it faster than the B580. But moving on down the road, let's go to 1440p ultra quality on Plague-Tale Requiem. We'll get it straight. That's good enough. Okay, now B580 got 56 on the top and 45 on the 1% lows. Again, the 4060 Ti, both of them, the 3070, 7700 XT, not even going to mention the 4070. No sense. But the B580's taking the lead over the 3060 Ti and taking the lead over the 6700 XT, the 7600 XT. Now, do remember, this is rasterization. Just rasterization. So, looking at it, it's not too bad. Moving on down the road. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Let's see what we get. 1080p high quality. The B580 took 90 on the top and 70 on the 1% lows. Not too bad. But the 3070 took the cheese at 98 on the top and 77 on the 1% lows. 4060 Ti, 8 and 16 gigabytes did 100 FPS on the high and 81 on the 1% lows. So, again, it's still, the B580 runs 1% faster on the highs than the 6700 XT, but it runs 5% faster on the 1% lows on the 6700 XT. So, keeping that in mind, it's not too bad. And looking at the 7600 and the 7600 XT, and they're running equal. So when you see two cards like this running equal, you know, they're not really something I really gonna fathom with, because The 7600 is 8 gigabytes of VRAM. The 7600 XT is 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So, and being 9% slower than the 580, and the 580 having 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and with the A770 being way lower on the chart. See, you have to understand, the B580's got 20 XE cores. Now, the A770 has, what, 32, I think, 32 XE cores? So it has a lot more than the B580. But with them taking and repurposing everything and reforming how everything, to make everything work faster inside of that chip, they've done a really good job on that. I'm really impressed on it. So let's move on to Cyberpunk 2077 1440p. And again, B580's got 63 on the high and 51 on the low. Not too bad, but still the 4060 Ti's are kicking the pants. And the 3070 is definitely up there, 5 FPS higher. So, again, it's still within the parameters between the 6700 XT and the B580. Those two look like they're trading blows. Those two look like they're trading blows the most. Now, as far as the RTX 4060 being way down here, and you know, that having 8 gigabytes of VRAM, this card really surprises me that it's this low on rasterization. But I've always told you guys like this. If you want rasterization, you can go either Intel or AMD. If you want more rasterization. If you want more ray tracing, until AMD comes out with their newest card that they said they're going to have more ray tracing in the 8000 series, until it comes out, NVIDIA takes the crown on ray tracing. So, let's move on and see what else we can find out. Dying Light 2, Stay Human, DX11. Let's see what we get. And that's at 1080p high quality. B580, 74 on the high, got 63 on the low. Again, 4060 Ti, both sections, definitely 4% higher. 4 FPS higher, my bad. And the 6700 XT seems it's running way lower than the B580 by 6 FPS, so that's not too bad. Again, the 4060, I can see why everybody doesn't recommend the 4060. It's like the 7600 XT. Nobody recommends that. You know, even the 6650 XT, I can give it credit. At least it's doing its job, and it's staying faster than a 3060 12 gigabytes of VRAM at about 9 FPS difference. 6650 XT is running faster than a 3060. Wow. Interesting. Let's move on to 1440p Dying Light. High quality. Intel Arc B580. 55 on the high, 45 on the low. That's not too bad in between there. But 3070 looks like it took the lead at 59 on the high and 48 on the low. Looks like the 4060 Ti, both of them, the 8 and 16 gigabytes, fell short by 1 FPS. 1. I'm not even going to mention the 4060 anymore, because for the simple fact of the price, it's not worth the price to performance at this point. So, no sense of mentioning all that. Moving on. Dragon's Age 1080p Ultra. Let's see what we got. Let's see if we can get it in frame. There, y'all can see me fussing with the frames. There, that's best enough. So, 580, B580, 52 on the high, 41 on the low. It looks like the 6700 XT, 7600 XT, 3060 Ti, 4060, 7700 XT, 3070, and the RTX 4060 Ti, 8 and 16 gigabytes, they all took the lead. They all took the lead. That's amazing. So far, out of one game, it was able to take the lead on the 6700 XT. Maybe two. I gotta look back at it, but I think one or two is fine. Okay, let's keep moving on down the road. 1440p, Dragon's Age. If I can get it to work right. Yep, 1440p. There we go. B580, 43 on the high and 34 on the low. 7600 XT took the lead. 3060 Ti, 3070, 4060 Ti, 8 gigabyte. The 7700 XT, the 4060 Ti, 16 gigabyte. They all took the lead. But the 6700 XT fell short by 3 FPS on the high side. On the low side, it fell short by 4 FPS. That's not too bad. So, I'll tell you all my conclusion at the end. So, you'll find out. War Thunder 1080p. It's in movie stage. Who knows? B580 got 255 on the high and got 220 on the low. Ran even with the 7700 XT at 255 on the high and 220 on the low. That's interesting. Wow. So this one didn't do too bad, but it still fell short of the 3060 Ti, 3070, 4060 Ti, and the 7700 XT. Understandable. And it shows about maybe 11 FPS difference between the 6650 and the B580. So that's not too bad. It could be worse, but it's not too bad. 1440p. Let's see if we can get this down here. 1440p, B580, 191 on the high, 167 on the low. Still fell short of the 3060 Ti, 4060 Ti, 6700 XT, the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. There's a little bit of difference between the 8 and 16 now, depending on the game. Like I said, there's going to be a difference. 3070, 7700 XT. This game here fell short of... Actually, no. It went way short of the 6700 XT. Way short. Let's see how short. Let's see, we got 191. Sorry, I can't do math in my head today. That's the reason why I use the calculator. Let's see, 67. It's 204. Let's see, 204. 13 FPS difference. So, I have one of my loyal subscribers on Discord that has a 6800, and I'm just doing a little comparison for him so he knows what he's dealing with, and as he watches the video he can see that the 6800 is keeping up with the B580, even doing a little bit better. So if you know the performance on some of the graphics cards, then you can see where I'm coming from with this. So moving on down the road, let's go. Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, 1080p, high quality. Let's try to get it in frame. That's good enough. So, B580, 152 on the high and 105 on the low. 4060 Ti seems to be doing better, but the 8 gigabytes more closer to the B580 than the 16 gigabyte. Okay? In price wise. Because if we go to Amazon and we type in the 4060 Ti 8 gigabyte, well, it says $400. It's $100 difference. you know. So for $100 difference, it should be doing a lot better than what it is doing. I do admit, with a friend of mine that I was talking with, they said that, it should be doing way better than what it's doing, because the 4060 is $300, so it should be doing way better. So, but for that price and having 1 FPS difference right here, 1 FPS difference between the two, and this being at $250, right? And looking at the price of an 8 GB card, let's see, let's give the benefit of the doubt. Let's say right here, $390. So let's go back. So we look at the 250 and we minus it from 389. $139 difference. One FPS difference in the highs. 4 FPS difference in the lows. B580 took 4 FPS, or 4 FPS difference. Is 4 FPS faster than the 4060 Ti 16 gigabytes, but it's keeping up it in the highs. For that $139 price difference is not worth getting a 4060 Ti 8 or 16 gigabytes for that 1 FPS difference for $139 more. So you pay for every FPS $139. That sucks. That way sucks. So moving on down the road. I know you guys are going to leave your comments. You can leave your comments. So Marvel Spider-Man Remastered 1440p, very high quality. And let's see what we get. B580, 110 on the high and 83 on the low. Now look at the 4060 Ti 8 and 16 gigabytes. 1 FPS difference on the high. 3 FPS difference on the low. So basically the 4060 Ti is 3 FPS faster than the 580. But the 580 is 1 FPS faster than the highs on the 4060. This is just rasterization, guys. But like I said, for that $139 difference, for that 1 FPS, and even that 3 FPS difference there, is not worth getting the 4060 Ti. Especially on rasterization. I mean, let's move on. 1080p, high quality, Hogwarts Legacy. Let's see what we got. B580, 71 on the high, 47 on the low. 7600 took the lead. So did the 7600 XT, the 4060 Ti, the 6700 XT, the 4060 Ti 16 gigabytes, the 3060 Ti, and the 7700. But right underneath, 4060. 1 FPS difference between the B580 and the 4060. On the lows, 2 FPS difference. So basically the B580, for the $50 that's in between the two, by 1 to 3 FPS difference for that $50, at least for that $50. But see, the RX 6650 XT is hot on the trail. And that's what, $12 cheaper than the B580 in rasterization. This is really close, y'all. I mean, this is like super close. Hogwarts Legacy, let's go at it again. 1440p high quality. B580, 59 on the high and 42 on the low. 7600 matches equally. 7600 XT matches equally. to the B580. That is insane. Price is about almost equal to the B580 with the 7600. 7600 XT is more pricey to the B580. So, if you're thinking in your mind, I'll give you my conclusion at the end. We'll talk about it at the end. So, looking at this, the B580 is not doing bad. Definitely not doing bad. So, and 4060 is right below. Moving on. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down. I'm sure you guys want to see the benchmarks of every one of these, but time is growing short on the video, and I don't want to make it too long. We'll do Starfield right here. We'll do Starfield. 1080p ultra quality. We'll see the B580 got 40 on the high and 20 on the low. Ouch. Big ouch. That is a big ouch. So that's telling me that on Starfield it's not even going to be worth it. And this is running with a 9800X3D, guys. It's not even getting up to where it needs to be. Especially on Starfield, you need at least 80 FPS to have a decent gameplay. I think 80 FPS. Because if I remember right, I had somebody show me on their PC what they were getting and what the 4070, and and it was like close to this. They were getting, with the 4070, they were getting like 76 on the high, and they were getting like 64 on the low. But this is pretty good with the 9800X3D. But big ouch. So 1080p is not going to be within your wheelhouse for this card. 1440p in Starfield, this is not even playable. This to me is not even playable. So there's no sense of me even talking about 1440p because it's not going to be playable. So their overall 12-bit game average at 1080p right here, B580, 77 on the high, 58 on the low. 3060 Ti, 4060 Ti, 4060 Ti, 3070, 7700 XT take the lead. But 6700 XT is within 2 FPS difference on the high. Means it's only 2 FPS faster on the high. But on the low, it looks like that the 6700 XT is 3% faster on the 1% lows. So, but if you're looking at the 6800, it's going to be faster than the B580. Just my opinion. So, let's move on. 1440p game average. B580 got 57 on the high and it got 45 on the low. My rule is this. Now, we'll get to the rule. We'll just mention this really quick. Anything below 60 FPS, to me, is unplayable. Anything below 60 FPS is unplayable. So, and there's not much difference between the 6700 XT and the B580. Not much difference. Now, we can look at the price at the 6700 XT. We can go and we can type in the 6700 XT. So, it's $310 there. And the 3060 is not even within the, it's not even worth getting the 3060 12 gigabyte. B580 would be better suited than the 3060. So, moving on. Oh, Lordy. Power consumption says at 267 compared to the 6600, the 4060, 4060 Ti, 7600, the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte, and the 6650 XT, and the 3060. Power consumption is better than the B580. 7600 XT to the 4070. I know the 4070 is not two. To me, it's not 289. Okay, because if it is, then that means, and I'm going to explain this. If the 4070 is at 289 watts, then that means you're pulling 79 watts off of the PCIe connection, and you're only pulling 200 watts max off of the the PCI connector, the 8-pin connector. So, not unless you're pulling a 208 watts off of the PCI connector and the PCIe slot that you're pulling still 71 or something like that. 81. That seemed, because I can tell you, I pulled mine to the max. I got 77 off of the PCIe slot, and the PCIe connector, I got 208. So, if you go to add that up, you got 77 off the PCIe slot and the PCIe connect. You know what I mean? The plug-in. I pulled 208. So you hit the plus and you hit 208. 285. So there's 4-watt difference between what they're using and what I'm using. So, just for clarity, I just want to give a little bit of clarity on that. 1440p. Power consumption at 1440p, they're doing 241 compared to the 6650 XT, the 4060, and the 6600. So it's doing better at 1440p. And they got the ray tracing. We're going to just do the Metro Exodus 1080p and 1440p. Ultra RT, normal, hybrid, physics, hair, test, Q upscaling, and then we're going to do the next one after that. So looking at this, the B580 did 86 on ray tracing and 61 on the low. Now, looks like the A770 did better. The 7700 XT did better. The 4060 did better. 4060 Ti and the 4070, of course. 7600 XT seemed to fall short. And the 6700 XT fell short. So I can see where the 6800 falls short on ray tracing. But on rasterization, it doesn't. So I can see that from here. Now let's do 1440p the same way. Oh, that's good enough. So down at the bottom, 36 for the, let's roll it up. 6700 XT, 36 on the high and 29 on the low. And the B580, 60 on the high and 51 on the low. So it's not too bad with the ray tracing on for this. But like I said, the A770 seems to be doing better on ray tracing than the B580. Even though that they talked about the enhancements are better on ray tracing on the B580, still, again, I'm not seeing it. So, now you guys got pretty much a good look of what's going on. Let's go back to the main screen and we'll finish this up because I don't want this video to be over an hour long. Okay, my final thoughts. I can see the usage for the B580, for the Battlemage 580. I can see a very good usage as it being an entry-level card plus. But as far as a mid-level or high-level card, don't even look in that direction. It's not even going to be worth it. There are some games that I see that the B580 doesn't show promise with, but there are some games that do. So I think it's going to be game limited as far as the FPS on at least half of the games or 3/4 of the games. So it's going to fall short in rasterization. It's going to fall short in ray tracing. And but the good thing about it being a $250 card, it's affordable. It is affordable. And the power consumption's not that great, but it's not that bad neither. So if it's a card that you're looking at and you say, okay, well, I just don't want to spend a lot of money and this is a new card coming out, $250 is good for me. So be it. If that's the kind of card you want to get you by for a couple years, it will do that. And then you save up and get yourself something newer, something bigger, and something better. It's a go in between card. You could do that, or you could take and wait for the 8000 series to come out with AMD. If you decided you want to get between a $400 and $600 card, who knows what the price is going to be yet. Or if you want something that's less of a price and you don't want to pay $250, then looking at the benchmarks of this card, the B580, the B570 is at $219. I don't think the B570 is going to be that great of a card. Not if you want to keep up around the speeds of the 6650 XT to maybe the 6700 XT. Could be below the 6650 XT or right in between the 6650 XT and the 6700 XT. Or it being about the same, maybe almost close to the same speed as the 4060. Could be something you can look at too. But for the pricing, in looking at the difference in price between the B580 and the B570, so you take your 219 and you minus your 250, $31 difference. $31 difference between the B580 and the B570. I'm sure there's a big performance difference. So I would if I was going to get a card and I just wanted something temporary, let's say to get me past the next 2 years and I want to save up for the next best thing, then yeah, I would go with the B580. I really would. Or a 3070. But I think the 3070 is only 8 gigabytes of VRAM and the B580 is 12 gigabytes of VRAM. So it's like a 4 gigabyte difference. And plus, I've been hearing people talk about the little stuttering that the 3070 does, and you got the B580, which is the newest on the block, and it's got the most updated drivers, and hopefully Intel decides to do month-by-month updates on their drivers, which would be nice. Then yeah, the B580 would be the next one to go. But if you've already saved up $600 and you said, well, I'm just going to wait. Well, you got the 50 series coming out for NVIDIA that they might have a 5060 or a 5070. That might be in your price range. Or you might be able to get the 8000 series in that price range. But if you want to spend half that, more than half that, get you a B580. So you have choices. Now, would I use the B580 for gaming as much as I know and what I build and everything else? Truthfully, if I was doing a starter computer, yes, I would definitely get it for a starter computer. But as far as everyday gaming, like AAA games and stuff like that, hell no. No. I mean, you can take yourself to TechPowerUp and you can go to the relevant performance chart. We'll just flip you back there really quick. And you can see right here that they got the B580 at 100%, and then going up is they got the 6700 XT at 6% faster. You got the 3060 Ti at 7% faster. You got the 4060 Ti at 21% faster. And then you got the 2080. The 2080. That is an old card. 11 gigabytes, 21% faster. 2080 Ti, 11 gigabytes, 21% faster. Now, if you were to go to, let me think. Let me see if Amazon's got it. $2080 Ti, 11 gigabytes, $530 for a 2080 Ti, Black Edition, EVGA. They still got them. $699. Stupidly sick. $550. Look at this, 2080 Ti. $1,295. That's definitely a rip. Right here. $460. 2080 Ti, $350. It's closest I've seen right here. $350. So it's $100 difference. If you do your research, it's $100 difference. It's $100 difference between the B580 and the 2080 Ti, 11 gigabytes. But 21% faster for that $100. 21% faster for that $100. Right here. Then you got your 3078 gigabytes, which I don't recommend. They got a 6800, it's got 16 gigabytes, that's 26% faster. 6800, 26% faster. Then you got your 7700 XT. Let's look up the price of the 6800. RX 6800, 16 gigabytes. Right here, $370. So you take your $370 and you minus it from $250, $120 difference. So for $120 difference and being right here, sorry, 26% faster. 26% faster with the $120 difference. So that means you pay $120 more, you get 26%. And for that $120, if I divide it by the 26%, that gives me about maybe a 4.6%. Is it good? Is it bad? 4.6. Anything below 5% is not bad. Anything below 5% is not bad. So is it worth the price to performance? Well, the advantage with the B580 and compared to the 6800, that the B580 is going to have a little bit better in ray tracing than the 6800. But the 6800 is going to have better rasterization than the B580. So there's a trade-off between the two. Do you want more rasterization or more ray tracing? It's just like with NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel when it comes to ray tracing. NVIDIA is going to take the crown on ray tracing. Rasterization, AMD is going to mostly take it. And sometimes Intel, they're going to trade blows. But overall, it looks like AMD fell behind on ray tracing, and Intel's coming up on the ray tracing. Hopefully the 8000 series on AMD is going to come out to something better. Back to the main screen. Conclusion. Again, is it worth it? Starter computer, yes. Everyday AAA gaming? No. That's just my honest opinion. So, now that we made it down to the honest opinion, and you made it to the end of the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, you hit that like button, and hit the notification so you know when I post the next video. Until the next time, and the next video, you know what it is, and we'll see you on the next one.